So today's call, I'll get straight to it. It's things you should know about building teams in the Philippines that's different than the US. Quick intro, I'm the founder of Design Source Media, which is a web agency, and DSM Talent, which is a staffing agency. Started the agency in 2011. I'm an agency owner, currently managing a team of 13, and then a husband, father, and with 3 young kids. So why the Philippines, right? Why not all the other countries? Like I've hired talent from India, Pakistan, let's see, uh, like even South Africa, place in Africa. I don't remember off the top of my head, and pretty much, and of course in the U.S., all over, right? Why the Philippines in general? It's these points right here, right? English proficiency, cultural compatibility, cost effectiveness. They have experience in outsourcing and really strong work ethics and a really tech savvy workforce. So that's why in the Philippines that's really unique compared to some of the other countries. So so before hiring employees from the Philippines, here are 10 differences like you should know. Number one is traffic, right? It depends on, I guess, really where everyone's at. Traffic in the Philippines, especially in the Manila area, so that's their capital, gets insane because the problem is they don't have, they've grown way faster and their infrastructure can't handle it. So here's an example from from the south to the north, just going through Manila, to Quezon City. It's 13 miles. All right. It's going to take 55 minutes to 2 hours. Imagine driving 13 miles and spending 2 hours doing that. From LA, downtown LA to Santa Monica, 22 to 40 minutes. And this is 16, almost 17 miles, right? Sure, it depends on the time of the day, right? During rush hour or not, but this is fairly common. So that's why in the Philippines, especially individuals that are living near in, Manila area, Metro Manila, that most don't like to go into the office because they're spending an hour and a half, 2 hours one way. So they're spending 3 to 4 hours in transit, right? A day. Imagine that, right? Half your day is pretty much gone from traveling, and then you're at work for another 8 hours. Um, there's another thing unique in the Philippines regarding traffic is that there is a coding a structure. So based on your plate of your license plate in the Philippines, you are prohibited to drive your car on those days or else you're going to get fined. So can you imagine that? I think if we implemented that in the US, there would be an uproar, right? Like, what? What are you saying? I can't drive Tuesdays because my plate ends with a number 3 or number 4 at the end? Right. Well, that's one of the ways what they do to decrease traffic. So, as I mentioned, remote work, flexible hours to avoid long commutes, trying to avoid rush hour. That's one of the things that we try to do, offering remote options. And overall, just less commuting leads to, less stress, better performance, improves work-life balance, right? Overall, increasing loyalty and morale. Another piece is you may hear the term Filipino time. So has anyone heard of that term before?
I haven't, but there's definitely an Indian time.
Yeah, Indian time. What's Indian time?
Yeah, it's like 2 hours after you're supposed to arrive.
Have you ever been to an Indian wedding? I've been to one. It's scheduled for 4. The party actually started at 8.
Sounds about right.
Right? Sounds about right. So very, very similar. I remember I flew the team out to Hong Kong one year, and we were all meeting up. And Hong Kong is not that different from a work life, like similar to any major city. So, for example, like New York City, um, or Tokyo. super fast pace, extremely fast. So then I have my team, we're hanging out, sure, it's more sightseeing, we're trying to enjoy the place. And you can see it from like on the subway stations, we're just walking and everyone else is just blowing by us. Like they have this like this mission. And the same thing in New York City, right? Everyone's like on the go and you better get out of their way versus like place down the south. And so with Filipino time for like events, just like Indian time, for events, meetings. The start time is just like a recommendation, but majority of the time, everyone's going to be there a lot later. Okay. And so in the US, typically punctuality is more valued, and people try to arrive even earlier than the meeting time. Okay, but I don't know about the Gen Zs. That may change. But I know my parents' generation and my generation has been more punctual. Another thing, natural disasters. So in the Philippines, they're more prone to typhoons and volcanic activities, which impact power outages. I'm not saying U.S. doesn't have their own fair share of weather problems, like right now, what Florida is going through, right? So, quick question, quiz. Does anyone know the difference between a typhoon versus a hurricane? I found this out a while back, but really they're both basically a cyclone on water, right? A tornado on water, essentially. They're pretty much the same. The difference is where it came from. So which body of water, like ocean. So if it came from the Pacific Ocean, then it's a typhoon. If it came from the Atlantic, it's a hurricane. Okay. So something new, right? You learned today. So that's why the hurricane going into Florida, hence it's called a hurricane. So yeah, we have our problems with hurricanes and tornadoes in the south and earthquakes right on the west coast. So for the Philippines, yeah, typhoons and volcanic activities. It's common to have power outages or internet disruptions. So what we do is we try to get good quality equipment that can run the whole day without a lot of charge. So that's why we like to do a standard issue of MacBook Airs. And then power banks and then backup internet. So even if they do lose power, they can actually still work during that time. So it kind of give you an idea, just these are some pictures, right, of the floods and stuff like that. Now, also, it depends on the area that they live in. Most of our team members do not live in the rural area, and the floods aren't like this. And we encourage our team to live a little higher in elevation, so they're not flooded to this capacity. So there's Philippinisms, which is basically local like language and local expressions. For example, when someone basically needs to go to the bathroom, I might say, "Hey, bio break," or "Hey, I'll be back. Go to the bathroom," right? Um, for someone in the Philippines, they'll call it CR. Some of these things aren't necessarily common language in the US. So those are some of the differences in the language. Holidays. So there's 18 public holidays. There's a lot of festivities. There's a big group of Christianity and Muslim holidays that are recognized by the government. So compared to the US, there's only 8. And so we don't celebrate as many as in comparison to the Philippines. And then another thing to add is that the government may declare a day to be a holiday for a random reason. So those are some of those things that's unique regarding holidays in the Philippines. Communication style. So high context communication where messages are more implied through tone, body language, nonverbal cues. and employees may hesitate to give direct feedback or disagree openly, preferring indirect responses like "I'll try" and "We'll see." And it goes not just for the Philippines, but a lot of like Asian countries are very similar. And more extreme case would be like Japan. If you work with someone in Japan, it's the hierarchy is really explicit, really clear. The seniority level or age, if someone's really being really respectful to a senior, they even have certain languages, to represent certain words to represent their respect for someone. And with that in mind, it's us Americans may have a difficult time saying, "Hey, why don't you just tell me what you think, right? Just say it, right? What's bothering you? What's holding you back, right? Just say it. Just say it." And it's the challenge is more cultural and their upbringing and being able to, when you bring someone on from the Philippines or an Asian country, understanding that, but also building an environment where they are comfortable and they can trust that they can provide feedback, and that is truly what the leader or the boss wants. Okay. And they're not being disrespectful for saying and providing their opinion. Okay. Um, so yeah, in the US, very explicit. Everything's really clear. There's not as much implications. Like there's not much assumptions. It's like pretty much like these are the direct instructions sets, and really open to disagreements and feedback being a little bit more common, right? I mean, so question for everyone else here, right? Has this been the case? Have you noticed these things, especially if working with others in a different country, maybe versus working with someone in the US?
Yeah, I just on one of my freelance projects, I hired someone on, I think it was Upwork, and they
Hmm.
were from Nigeria.
Hmm.
I mean, the job they did was great. It's just the connection issues. I think their internet connection wasn't the
Mm.
best.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, a little bit of like a language barrier, obviously. But
Hmm.
yeah, those are just kind of the things I was dealing with on this project, and
Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah. Anyone have a challenge with getting feedback, like getting their honest response, like what they are internally feeling rather than fluff, right? Like, oh yeah, I'm doing okay, right? I don't want to stereotype, but like for example, certain it's just my personal experience when I work with someone from India or Pakistan, I would get the the typical yes, like just they would agree to everything,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. For
and
sure.
then when it comes time to delivery, it it's not there. It's like, well, why did you say yes to that?
Yeah.
Right.
Or like,
And
yes, we make it happen. We make it happen. That's a
yeah,
common like line.
yeah, exactly. So that's one of those things where even though the culture is like that, or maybe the upbringing is like that, what we need to do, when we bring someone on, is to basically break that habit. And we pretty much kind of go through this bit of like boot camp internally in our organization, and to basically reframe and change, adjust their mindset and their communicate and train their communication, and how we communicate in our own organization. So that's one of those things that we have to do. Um, so handling conflict and confrontation is different. Okay? Uh, in the Philippines, conflict averse culture, harmony is valued. Right? Disagreements are often handled indirectly or through a third party. Um, versus the US, direct confrontation is pretty common. Sure, you have some that are, non-type A, but some that are like pretty much more direct. I'm much more direct than normal. Sometimes I get into trouble because of that. But for me, my mindset has always been, hey, I want to resolve the issue, right? I've been really Americanized. Um, but I do understand that in the Philippines, they try to avoid conflict as much as possible. I'll let you know the extreme cases. They'll go as far as not even showing up to work anymore. They will quit. Okay. And because they are so afraid of their mistakes or their failure, and or maybe they're embarrassed that they're like, okay, I pretty much like dishonored my family name, in a sense, and they don't even show up. So it's one of those things where for me as a leader, when I'm coaching and I'm mentoring my team and others, like I let them know and I repeat myself over and over again. It's okay to make mistakes. It's more important that you share that and you talk to me about it, you talk to the team about it so we can prevent it from happening. We all make mistakes. I'm the one that makes the most mistakes out of the whole company, right? So I would be a hypocrite if I just started making fun of others of their mistakes and expecting people to be perfect because that's impossible. So hierarchy, honorifics. One of the things that, hey David, one of the first things I have to break or let the new hires to stop doing is stop calling me sir. I feel like some sort of knight when you call me that. So don't call me sir. You don't need to call people ma'am, right? That's not norm in the US. Just you can call us by our first names. It's okay. And if you really want to be polite, you can call me, I guess, Mr. Lee. But even then, I feel a little weirded out about it. So you can just call me Dave, right? Just keep it simple. But that's typically their way of showing respect for hierarchy. Another unique thing in the Philippines is they have this really cool program called the Philibig Fund, which is a housing program where they can borrow money at a much lower. So it's a combination of being able to borrow money for at a lower interest rate, but also money is contributed almost, it acts as like a savings account too, which they can borrow from. And then they can use that money to buy housing or buy vehicles with that. So it's also government funded, government supported. It's pretty cool. That's one unique thing that does not really exist in the US. There's no housing, really a big housing support for us in the US. So there's the government funded. We have, private mortgages, right? 401ks, maybe first time home buyer programs, right? But for the big, it is fully like government supported. 13-month pay. So who here knows about or heard about 13-month pay in the Philippines? All right. So in the Philippines, I believe there's one other country that also does a few other countries that does this. Uh, it is a so for employees like full-time hires, there's a mandatory bonus equivalent to 1/12 or basically 1 month of their annual salary, their base pay, paid by December 24th. So who's eligible? All full-time employees who have worked at least 1 month during their calendar year. And their calculation is basic salary divided by 12, which is their 13-month pay. And if their salary this is in pesos, Philippine pesos, 240,000, it is 20,000 would be their 13-month pay. Okay. It would be prorated if they work less than a year. So why does this exist? It's the Philippines government's way of forcefully implementing some sort of bonus structure for the country, and it's paid out during the holidays. So I guess this is my theory. It's more of like improving their economics during the Christmas season because during that time, a lot of people buy Christmas presents, and this is where the money is utilized, buying Christmas presents and gifts. Because remember, they're really big in there's a big Christianity, right, population, a Catholic, to be specific, in the Philippines. So this money is implementation of a standard bonus, and some employers would be forced to pay this, but also provide even additional bonuses too on top of that. So there's that. That's different than the U.S. We don't have that. Some employers, I mean, it's up to them, right? They don't have to provide a bonus. They don't have to provide a raise. This is government requirement. So I already mentioned that. Um, Family-oriented work values. So that there's a huge difference there. In the Philippines, family is central. So workers seek employment to support their families, often living in family units. Okay, I'm not saying people in the U.S. don't care about their families. Okay, I just want to make that clear distinction. But typically in the U.S., they're not going to move in with their parents. They're not going to have their parents or in-laws move in. They're not going to have even their aunts and uncles move in, right? And then by saying this, you're probably thinking, Dave, you're crazy. I would never have my aunts and uncles and in-laws move in, right? That's insanity. But in the Philippines, that's normal. Like, hey, let's get let's get a house, or they already have a house that's been passed on from generation to generation, and now they're living together with family, and it's actually a beautiful thing because um, they have family members that help with family chores, watching the kids, so everyone can kind of work together in sync to work and help with the expenses, right? um, that's fairly common versus in the US, what's more common nowadays is double income and daycare, right? Like, oh, daycare is crazy expensive. We need to find daycare. Our the grandparents are still working, and we don't really have any additional family support. So we're just gonna have our kids in daycare. And that's typically the US, right? I mean, anyone want to share where your thoughts are? Uh, any do you feel that this is true from your perspective and being in the US?
It's like 18 years old, you either move out right away and you begin supporting yourself, but you're still a
Yeah.
kid at 18. I still feel like people are still kids at like 28, 30 years old.
Yeah.
It's unreal.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Building personal and professional relationships. So in the Philippines, close-knit work relationships are common, and colleagues are often seen as family. Okay. In the US, clear boundaries between personal and professional relationships. Okay. Um, so I'll give you some real examples. So my own team, after work on the weekends, they would hang out. And we're not talking about, oh yeah, it's not because they were friends beforehand. They became friends at work, and they're like, oh yeah, we're going to the mall, we're going here, let's go hang out, let's have our let's have a play date. Typically in the US, like, hey, work's work. I don't even want to talk to the people at work. I don't want to hang out. I have my separate group of friends. Like even for myself, I was talking to my own friends. We hang out every Thursday night, and these are my friends that I've known since middle school. And I asked them, hey, what about your friends at work, right? Would you ever hang out with them after? They're like, nope, don't want to talk to them. They're my work friends. Like, what's the difference between work friends and middle school and high school friends? Oh, they're just different. So it's very compartmentalized, right? Separated in the US. Where in the Philippines, it's like there's that work, people at work, and the things that you do after work, it's very, very all interconnected, right? Very, very close knit. So benefits with hiring remote workers from the Philippines, effective communication, adapting to Filipino communication and feedback styles improve the collaboration. So as I mentioned, when we bring someone on, that training is critical. Conflict management, respecting indirect feedback, and private conflict resolution maintains team harmony, right? But this goes with any human being, right? You don't want to embarrass someone. You don't want to be an a-hole, right? As a leader, as a boss, and just embarrass someone, say, hey, you're doing a terrible job in front of everyone, right? Don't pull like an Elon, right? And make it completely public. Um, and if there's an issue, talk about it privately. And building strong relationships, acknowledging there is hierarchy, and offering flexibility around family builds trust and loyalty. So I, as a leader, go out of the way during our one-on-ones. I talk about, hey, what's going on, family-wise, what's, kids. I even go as far as like sleep schedule. Like, hey, are you getting your 6 hours of sleep? Because the way I look at it is I'm here as a leader, as a coach, to build a high performing like sports team. And so I'm not just looking at each individual on how they're performing just on the field or on the basketball court, but also what are they doing outside of it, right? I don't want them to not get enough sleep or poor diet choices because that's going to affect their performance during the game. And or it might be some personal stuff, right? I'm not gonna like dig deep. I only ask like if they want to share, and if they do share, I keep it confidential, and I provide as much assistance as I can. Okay. I've had times where we've had a new hire say like, hey, I'm struggling with bills, but I'm not feeling well. I'm like, hey, have you seen the doctor? And they would say, well, I can't afford seeing a doctor. I'm like, okay, well, how much is it? It's $80. Here's $80, right? As a matter of fact, here's $200. Here's your funds. If you need to take more tests or you need all that, just take it from the funds, right? And that is my commitment to investing in my team to ensure that they are taken care of and they're performing well. Okay. I wouldn't necessarily do that for a contractor, but I would do that for my own team. And then, of course, housing support. Uh, So remote work is what we really encourage because I wouldn't want to sit in traffic for 4 hours a day, right? There's only so many audio books I can listen to, right? I'll be bored to death, and my wife would kill me. Like, hey, when are you gonna get home? Because the kids are going crazy at home right now. Personal connections, being prepared for natural disasters, and regular. So for engagement, we have regular virtual activities. So we have our meetings, a Monday meeting, internal meetings. We have our morning stand up or scrum calls, but also we sometimes play like virtual games. But whenever possible, we'll fly everyone into a certain location, and we spend like 2-3 days with team exercises and fun team activities. So that's kind of how we break the monotony of just doing remote work, being on Zoom all day long. So a question for everyone, like what was one surprising thing you've learned today that you didn't know before the session?
In the 13th month pay. So they're like bonus incentive pay.
I think months was the typhoon versus the hurricane.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't know either. Yeah.
I think maybe with Filipinos in the Philippines, the communication style might be a little bit better than other parts of the world.
Why do you say that?
Maybe English speaking, would you say?
Oh, yes, yes.
Yeah,
So
that's
you
kind of
the
what.
question. Yeah, absolutely. Compared to the other Asian countries and other countries
Yeah,
in general, yeah, it's because of the history, right, of the Philippines. At one point, it was occupied by the US. So there's a lot of US influence in the Philippines. A lot of culture and their schools are
yeah,
are spoken in English. So it's and they're known for call centers. You know, like if you call into Comcast, Verizon, T-Mobile, right? Especially off hours, you're most likely going to get someone in the Philippines.
Right, right.
Uh, any other experiences for working with others, working with people in overseas in general?
I've worked with editors in Vietnam as well.
Yeah. What's
Pretty
any like cultural differences that really stood out for you?
uh not too much. All the communication has just been via email for the most part. They'll reach out, very nice, very respectful.
Yeah,
Otherwise,
yeah. That's good. That's good. That's good. Well, anyways, yeah, I'm gonna keep it short today. You know, as always, let me know if you have any questions. Thank you for being here. Hope you learned a little bit about the Philippines. It's a little bit different, but these little nuances really trip people up. And and the thing is, I don't want anyone to feel like offended or angry because they don't act the way we're used to, right? Just understand that there are cultural differences, and just knowing that has really helped me put everything in perspective. Anyways, thank you everyone, and have a wonderful weekend.